I think here in America, a really good way to stop a conversation with someone that's new to these notions is to start talking about lifestyle change. And I think that lifestyle change is really a lesser issue. Maybe a more prominent issue is a thought change. Because I think often our experience has been, and my own family's experience has been, that reducing consumption doesn't mean reducing pleasure in our lifestyle.
Yes.
And that actually has the reverse effect, that we actually get more pleasure out of those fewer dollars or those fewer electrons that we do consume because they're more meaningful to us.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm here in Eugene, Oregon, which thinks pretty sustainably, and way back behind me is Interstate 5 that's buzzing with the big trucks and the RVs and the cars fueling up with gas and diesel. And in between is a frontage road where they're coming to fuel up and get people fed. And in front of that, we're at a different kind of fueling station that's about to be built, is being built. And I'm with the managing partner, Ian Hill, of Sequential Biofuels. Welcome.
Thank you, Janaea. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it.
So, tell us, who's Sequential and how did it get going?
Okay, well, Sequential as a company has its roots about 6 or 7 years ago when I and a couple of friends were playing around with making biodiesel in our garage. And I was also an environmental science student at the University of Oregon here in Eugene at the time. And after a year or two of making biodiesel fairly successfully for ourselves and fueling about a dozen vehicles or so, we started to get drawn into doing community events where we'd set up a little information booth and we'd talk to whoever would stop by about what we were doing. And that led us to really realizing that there was a pretty significant nascent demand on the side of the marketplace, that people were dissatisfied with the current fuel offerings, that there was a real urge, a real need, a real desire for choice, basically, is what it came down to. And that pushed us into being a couple of dumb, young, naive kids. Say, hey,
with great ideas,
saying, we can totally do this. We can build a commercial biodiesel plant ourselves. And so, with that notion, we launched into a business plan exercise. Actually, wrote one and went out and started shopping around, trying to get some investment. And we quickly fell on our face and got a lot of no's. But did get a couple of good gems of advice, and those were that since there was no market, we were going to have a really hard time raising money to build a plant for something that there was no market for. So why not go out and try to build the market? And that's just what we did in the summer of 2002. We launched Sequential basically to build the market. And at that point, the market was zero. And at this point, we're about 3 million gallons a year of biodiesel in Oregon. Oregon and Washington have the highest rates of B100 or pure biodiesel retail in the whole country. So there's more people here in the Northwest that use pure biodiesel, and actually it's not B100 anymore, it's B99 because we got to subsidize the petroleum guys a little bit. But we have that largest market of those types of consumers are here in the Northwest, which just fascinates me.
So you built the market by bringing in biodiesel from elsewhere? Is that how you did it?
Yep, we would bring in truck and trailers and then rail cars into Eugene and into Portland. We were able to get some of the municipal fleets using it and build the market from there.
So you guys did that building, a lot of that building for your Oregon region, or some of Washington
Oregon,
as well?
A little bit of Washington. We actually had a truck and trailer that we drive from Orcas Island to Northern California, but really mostly Oregon. We really are an Oregon company. And at this point, we've got about 26 retail outlets around the state. We have a biodiesel production facility in Salem that produces roughly 1 million gallons a year out of used cooking oil.
So let me stop for a second on that. So you're producing it now locally. You've moved into that here in Oregon, nearby. Used cooking oil. Where does that used cooking oil, where was it used, and where did that clean oil come from?
Well, the clean oil comes from all over the place. It's safflower, it's canola, it's soy, it's even palm oil that was used.
So it's produced both in the United States and overseas.
Correct.
Is that right?
And it's very hard to know for sure where some of that used cooking oil comes from because we're the third, fourth, fifth person in line to get it.
So you've got a depot or whatever that gathers that used oil from lots of wherever places.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what?
And then this summer actually was a really big summer for us at our production facility because for the first time we were able to bring in virgin canola oil that was grown and processed in Eastern Oregon. And actually some of it was actually grown organically, certified by Oregon Tilth. Not all of it, but some of it. And we're actually starting to turn some of that into biodiesel in our Salem facility. So it's the first time for Oregon that we've been able to produce a liquid fuel from an Oregon agricultural crop.
Way to go.
Yeah,
congratulations. I bet
about
you're jazzed about that.
We are.
Congratulations.
We're very jazzed.
So you said you have about 26 retail outlets, and I would imagine that where you're wanting to head is more and more of that oil, more and more of that biodiesel is produced here. So what are we looking at behind us? What's emerging here?
Well, this, where we are today is Sequential's first biofuel station. So it's wholly owned by Sequential. It's the first time we've had the opportunity to control the development and operation of a biofuel station. As far as I know, it's one of the very first biofuel stations in the country. And I qualify it being a biofuel station in that all 5 of the fuel products sold here contain some amount of biofuels.
Tell us what those are. Let's start with that.
The first 3 are biodiesel blends. So we have B5, which is 5% biodiesel. We offer B5, one, so that we're always price competitive with petroleum diesel wherever it is.
I see.
Not necessary today because biodiesel is actually cheaper than petroleum, but petroleum moves around a lot. B20, which is what most of our government fleets and large business fleet customers use, and then B99.9, which is what most of our individual customers use, especially during the summer or the warmer months.
So that 99.9, you said that the government requires you to have a little bit of petroleum?
Correct.
Diesel?
Back in the fall of 2004, they passed a tax incentive for biodiesel, and also they upgraded an old one or an existing one for ethanol. But when they did that, they wrote the rules in such a way that you could only take the tax credit on a mixture. And then they left it up to the IRS in the IRS's infinite wisdom to make the decision of what a mixture was. It took them about 8 months to decide what a mixture was, and once the dust had settled, it appeared that as long as we had 1/10% of petroleum in there, we could take the tax credit.
Okay.
And it equals about $1 a gallon, so most of our customers are fine with saying we'll have 1/10 of a percent.
That.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 grades of biodiesel, and you had more products.
And then we have 2 grades of ethanol. We have E10, which is 10% ethanol and 90% gasoline, which can run in any gasoline vehicle on the road today.
Without adjustments, without changing your carburetor, without anything, just
right.
straight
No
off.
changes, no adjustments.
I see.
And actually in a lot of places here in Oregon, specifically Portland and the Medford Valley or the Rogue Valley, E10 is used in the winter because of air quality mandates anyway.
So what you're telling me here, because I don't know a lot about these, is that ethanol is a cleaner burning, less smog producing, whatever, less polluting fuel.
It is, yes, compared to gasoline.
All right.
Yep.
Go ahead.
And then our final fuel product is E85, which is 85% ethanol and 15% petroleum. This is the first E85 retail station in the Northwest that we know of, and I believe only one of 2 on the entire West Coast. It's interesting to note that, given the light, that GM recently has just come out with a big advertising campaign. I think it's called Live Green, Go Yellow, and they're really promoting what they call flex fuel cars.
Flex fuel. That's
flex
fuel. Okay.
Yeah,
and so what do those GM, buy yellow or whatever they're saying, cars? What do those take? Flex fuel.
They can run on either straight gasoline or 85% ethanol.
So what if somebody isn't going to buy a new GM car, and you can maybe tell me how that works, but if we have a gasoline vehicle, gasoline engine, what would it take to modify? Is that engine even modifiable to use E85?
As far as I understand, and I'm not an expert in this area, but from what I understand, as long as you have electronic fuel injection, really the only change you need to make to make it E85 compatible is changing out a computer chip, basically, that allows the vehicle to understand it. It kind of smarts up the vehicle. The vehicle can understand what type of fuel is in the system, and so it can adjust the aspiration so the vehicle performs properly.
And if it's a computer chip and it's smart, it would probably know if you've had some regular gasoline and some E85 and what mix is currently there.
Right. And it basically just does that by sensing the viscosity of the fuel, and that's all it needs to know to be able to adjust the aspiration or how much fuel is getting injected.
So I asked you earlier a question about gasoline versus diesel. I mean, does everybody want to go out and swap their vehicles and buy a new diesel? No, not everybody's going to do any of this, but one of the questions, of course, is that thing about having the market, the chicken and the egg problem. You know, you got to have your market in order to then have the fuels, and you just said that, so far as you know, you're the second retail outlet for ethanol, the ethanol products. So that would say to me that those of us who have gasoline engines, we need to be pushing to have more outlets for ethanol. Is that a fair thing to be thinking?
Oh, absolutely. If if diesel's not an option for you, if biodiesel's not an option, then E85 and the flex fuel vehicles is really a very good second option. One of the great problems with biodiesel and diesel is that the diesel vehicle options for individuals are so limited in this country.
That's really true. I mean, if you're a big semi, you're fine, but
which is a really interesting mystery why that's the case. All the vehicle manufacturers make diesels and they sell them in other countries, but darn it, you just can't get them here. And why, I don't know.
Well, we can speculate on all kinds of conspiracies and laws and regulations, but here's our reality that we're dealing with.
Right.
So besides the fuels that you have here, tell us what else you're doing on your site that that's different from most.
I will, and actually before I jump into kind of the laundry list of our different sustainable development items here on site, I'll quickly want to just preface with why we're doing that. The reason is this, because there is a tendency right now, greenwashing is fashionable. So why is Sequential doing this exactly? And for us, the reason is very clear, is that our competition is fairly impressive. We're basically attempting to compete against the largest industry in the world. That's the oil and energy industry. And so to do that effectively, we really need to be a different kind of fuel company. We need to be a company that actually does what our customers believe in, basically, and what we believe in as individuals working within an organization. So that really spurred us to have as much fun as we could with this site and also do as many sustainable design development elements as we could incorporate. So to begin with this site, it's a brownfield site. It's an old gas station.
Oh, I see. So you had to do cleanup or remediation?
We had to go through a whole cleanup process. We started developing the site about 2.5 years ago. It's essentially been a toxic hot potato since I think 1989, when it was discovered to be a brownfield site or contaminated. And the way that it was discovered to be contaminated was by the neighborhood here to the west.
Which is residential?
Which is largely residential. Was mostly on well water at that point. And people started tasting gasoline in their drinking water, and that's how this site got shut down. So it sat vacant for about 16, 17 years or so. And then we came along, saw that it was vacant, saw that it was an eyesore and a problem and really an opportunity. And so we were able to get together with Lane County, who had taken control over the site out of foreclosure, and a couple of state agencies and the federal US EPA, and get some money together to clean up the site and be able to start it on its path of being a cleaned up site and our biofuel station. It's especially interesting because about 1,000 feet, maybe a little bit less than that, to the east is the Willamette River, the coast fork of the Willamette River, and lots of natural areas that the local community feels very strongly about. So there's extra impetus to us to really clean up the site and to do well with it.
You don't want this leaching out into your beautiful river that a lot of people depend on, not just for recreation.
Not just for recreation, and actually we don't get our drinking water out of the Willamette, but other communities downstream do.
And they care that you aren't putting
and
toxic
they definitely
fuels
care.
down there. Yeah.
Absolutely, just as we would and our families would. So some of the design elements on this site are, a big obvious one sitting here are our fueling canopies have integrated solar. So 100% of the surface area of the canopies are solar panels.
Okay.
We expect to produce up to 50% of the energy, on-site energy needs for the station vis-a-vis those solar panels.
So for your pumping, for your lights, for your, whatever else your electrical uses are.
Right.
How big an array?
33.6 kilowatt.
Okay. All right.
So pretty good, pretty
That's
respectable.
A good size. Yeah.
And we also, with this array, we didn't want to just have an array that was kind of hidden away on a rooftop, producing, whizzing away and producing energy. We really felt like we had an opportunity here to make it a design element like they do in other countries now, trying to push that envelope more. And then also bring attention to it and focus on it as something that really has starting to come of age and is something that lots of people can do. As I was previewing your website earlier, I noticed multiple solar arrays on there, and it's something that unfortunately back in the 80s there was a big rush to it, and maybe we weren't quite ready, and there's some bad experiences in the market, kind of had some misperceptions of it, and so we're hoping to really loudly cry out, hey, solar is real, it's an option, come check out our array and learn about it.
Even when you have gray skies in Eugene, which you don't always have.
We don't, and actually interesting thing about Eugene, because a lot of people say that about Eugene, is if we compare Eugene to another country, Germany for instance, which is one of the largest solar producers in the world, we actually have more hours of good sunlight than Germany does.
Okay, go for it.
So we can actually produce a fair amount of solar energy here in the Willamette Valley.
So your electricity from your photovoltaics is going to be net metered. It's going to go back into the grid.
Right.
Right. You're not doing batteries.
We're not doing batteries.
So you're getting credits for all the power that you're not getting charged for the energy you're using.
Right.
Right.
Right. The electrons, as they get produced, actually feed on-site demand first, and then go into the grid. Excess goes into the grid. Okay. And that was a little bit of a struggle because we like the notion of having a battery pack, and if the whole grid goes down, we still got juice, but. My understanding is you lose a fair amount of efficiency by going with batteries, and the most efficient approach was just go direct and be grid tied. And then we could also sidestep batteries themselves and not have those on site. And then another really noticeable design element is our convenience store there in the background has a living roof.
A living roof. This is a new concept to me in the Northwest. So tell us, what is a living roof?
Living roof is essentially just what it sounds like. It's a planted roof. The species that can be planted on living roof or green roofs or eco roofs, as they're sometimes known, vary significantly. Ours are largely sedum varieties. We do have some bulbs. At this point, the roof just got finished planting last Tuesday night. I believe we have 3,600 individual plants up there right now, with about, I believe, 18 different species. We'll end up with about 4,800 plants. Once all the planting is done. And the purpose for the living roof is multifold. One, in the summer, we actually do end up with some cooling effect. So we decrease the energy needs of the building to cool. It turns out not to have a very good insulative value in the winter, so we also have standard rigid foam insulation as well underneath the living roof. Secondly, we slow down stormwater. The stormwater that's hitting the roof and would typically rush right off the roof into the municipal system is actually slowed down by the living roof acting as a sponge. It's also cleaned somewhat, filtered somewhat.
Sure, by the plants themselves.
By the plants and the soil itself. And then also we're creating more habitation in a spot that would typically be fairly harsh and negative to habitation, sterile.
Do you need to irrigate that in the summer?
Actually, not all of the species, unfortunately, but majority of the species are native species to the Willamette Valley. So our summer irrigation will be fairly limited, although we do have irrigation up there right now to help because of the time of year to get them started. The notion of an irrigated roof is, I think I'm comfortable with that. And actually, amazingly, we were able to get the roof installer, which was a separate company from the living roof installer, to honor a 20-year warranty on their roof underneath the living roof. So that we felt like that was kind of a triumph. And then also for us, honestly, as a business, a living roof is our sign. I mean, that and the solar arrays, those are our big marquees. Those are our big logo signs. We're kind of hoping to put our values up there. And then additionally, the building itself, the convenience store building, is a passive solar building, which Interestingly, at least for myself, my mother's an architect, so we were actually able to collaborate together on designing the building, which was a lot of fun. It is oriented to the due south. We have a southern overhang and a clear story, south wall clear story. So we do have the ability to get winter sun inside the building for daylight and also for heating. We have a thermal mass wall in the middle of the C-store.
Okay.
We do have operable windows on the south side and then controllable dampers and louvers on the north side for night flush cooling. And our engineers and the architect are saying that up to 50 to 75% of the year the building will heat and cool itself.
Excellent.
And will need no active heating cooling system. We do have a standard heat pump as backup in case we need it, but we're really hoping not to turn it on.
So your convenience store is also different from most of your little gasoline convenience stores. What are you planning to do with that?
Well, we saw another big opportunity there. And here in Eugene, there's actually a fair number of stores that offer organic and local products, but none of them are at fuel stations. And I have yet to go to a gas station where I really felt like I wanted to buy much of what was in the store.
Because there's a lot of junk food there.
There's a lot of Twinkies, a lot of stuff that isn't local, that's being made who knows where, out of who knows what. And I think, again, there was an opportunity there and a real need on the part of the market and our customers to have better offerings inside the convenience store. So we are focusing on having as many local products as possible. And Eugene is a wonderful place, Oregon is a wonderful place to do that. We've got lots of product availability here, really top quality, awesome products that happen to be price competitive too, which helps. Not always necessary, but it certainly helps.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so you're taking your values about sustainability, about local production, and attempting to implement it both at your plant, both at this store. I love the roof, you know, and what's inside. So I can imagine it being an attractor to your environmentally conscious folks here in Eugene, both for the foods for them and the foods for their car, if you will, the fuels for their car. Where do you envision this going in about our last 5-6 minutes? Where do you want Sequential to go?
Well, Sequential's a small, privately held company. We'd like to continue to be able to grow at a small, appropriate pace. We'd like to build more of these. Not a ton of them, but more of them. We'd like to make access both to the convenience store products and to the fuels and to kind of the idea behind it all more available up and down I-5. Our vision really is from the Bay Area in California up to British Columbia. That's kind of where we feel like is our home turf. And then furthermore, Sequential really wants to be and is excited by the opportunity of being a part of what we see as an energy and consumer revolution here in this country. And we recognize strongly that business has a huge part to play in this and can't stand on the sidelines. But there's a real interplay there between business and consumers. And all of us are consumers to some degree or not. To some lesser or greater degree, and that it's up to the business to kind of lead out and say, you know, we're willing to take a risk, we're going to put these products out here, we're going to put this business model out there, but then it's really up to the consumers, to the average people, you and me, to support those businesses once they do that.
Absolutely.
And if we don't get that support as a business, then the business goes away and we lose those choices.
What you're really saying is true, is consumers have to also do their part. I wanted to ask you sort of about long-term, in this last couple minutes, long-term production here. I think there are a lot of folks who say, okay, I'll get the old Mercedes, we'll switch it to biodiesel, maybe ethanol if people are thinking in that way, and continue merrily on my way. Consuming as much as I am now, living, I mean, without a dent in my lifestyle, basically, as gasoline prices go up and the supply goes down. Some people have said we don't have enough agricultural land to both fuel all this many cars, even if it's more efficient and even if they all were diesel, much less producing them all using diesel and so on, and the tires and everything else. We don't have agricultural land to do that, and to feed ourselves as well. I wonder if you've had some thoughts about that.
Absolutely. As a company and as individuals within a company, we spend a lot of time thinking about those questions. And the first one that you touched on there about the lifestyle is a little bit of a tricky one for me to answer, because my gut reaction is, no, that's absolutely wrong. We can't just keep going on merrily, that we really need to be conscious about what we consume and how much we consume. And I believe that firmly. But on the flip side of that, and there is a flip side, is that I think here in America, a really good way to stop a conversation with someone that's new to these notions is to start talking about lifestyle change. And I think that lifestyle change is really a lesser issue. Maybe a more prominent issue is a thought change, a decision-making change.
Yes.
It's like, what are the basis on which we make our decisions, and what rewards us, what makes us feel good? Because if we start to change that, we start to make those types of thinkings and those decisions longer term, incorporating our kids and our grandkids and the effects of our decisions today on those future generations. I think the reward on those decisions starts to change. And because I think often our experience has been, and my own family's experience has been, that reducing consumption doesn't mean reducing pleasure in our lifestyle.
Yes.
And that actually has the reverse effect, that we actually get more pleasure out of those fewer dollars or those fewer electrons that we do consume, because we feel better about them. We feel more empowered by them. They're more meaningful to us. And so trying to have the conversation happen in such a way that doesn't scare people, frighten people away from suffering somehow, which is a tricky one.
Very good point, because I think it's what I hear and I see is you're talking about a new mindset, a new way of thinking about things, that it's local, it's locally produced, it pollutes less, it means your kids will not have asthma, and on and on and on, the benefits, as well as sort of feeling good because you're helping the planet in these ways. So there's all pluses in here, even while you might not need one more gadget or whatever it is that makes you feel good. Ian, thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I wish you well, both with your business and in your own life. Thank you for bringing this forward to all of us. It took some perseverance on your part and your associates. This has been a treat, and I expect to see a lot more success from you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jania, for this opportunity to talk with you. Thanks for doing what you do, and I hope and imagine that you are able to continue doing it and keep up the good work.
Thank you. You're watching Peak Moment, community responses for a changing energy future. I'm Jania Donaldson. Join us next time.